This week on the Wake and Bake podcast,
I'm so excited to watch you be Miss Frizzle.
as Miss Frizzle, I would like to invite you all to come on my magic school bus while we go inside of the brain to see why cannabis might work for sleep and how it works in the human brain when we're trying to fall and stay asleep.
And the endocannabinoid system, of course, is intimately involved in our sleep-wake cycle and regulating sleep.
And then we'd be like, I'm getting into my pod now and I'm going to be sleeping. And you just, and then your mind just quiets down.
Sounds terrifying. And I also want to say, take that opiates, because the brainstem is filled with opiate receptors, which is why you can die of an overdose of those types of medications.
Hit the road, opiates. We've got a new friend in town.
I'm just spinning on like happy thoughts, and I've got like all these plans and stuff.
All of these beautiful gifts and tuning into what they are and allowing those to expand within your own body by using your own attention, by being your own Miss Frizzle, by getting on your own magic school bus as you're going to sleep and tuning into what's actually happening.
That sounds wonderful. Like I want to do that all the time.
Not so fast, Andrea. Welcome, lovely listeners, to another exciting episode of the Wake and Bake podcast. I'm your host, Corinne Tobias, and joining me is my lovely co-host, Andrea Meharg. Say hi, Andrea.
Hi, everybody.
Now, today we're doing things a little bit differently. Usually, I get to ask Andrea all of the nerdy cannabis science questions, and she does all the research and she tells us all of the nerdy things. But today we are diving down into one of my favorite rabbit holes, cannabis and sleep. And we are going to make a lifelong dream of mine come true. I'm so excited about this today. Are you excited, Andrea?
I'm so excited to watch you be Miss Frizzle.
Yes, I get to be Miss Frizzle today because as more people turn to cannabis for potential sleep benefits, it's essential to understand the science behind it. And unfortunately, just like so many things in cannabis, the science leaves a little bit to be desired here. And so we could have gone on and had the conversation we normally have. We go, well, this study shows this, and this study shows this, and what does it all mean? But instead, as Miss Frizzle, I would like to invite you all to come on my magic school bus while we go inside of the brain to see why cannabis might work for sleep and how it works in the human brain when we're trying to fall and stay asleep. I think one of the things that we need to address here is that currently, even if you take cannabis out of the whole equation, sleep is still one of the most mysterious processes in the human body, and we're obsessed with it, right? Like I currently have mouth tape, I've got nose strips, you've got eye masks, you take magnesium, like there are so many things that are being sold to you specifically to improve and enhance your sleep.
It's so true. And without sleep, your whole life goes to shit, right? Like it's so integral to everything that you're doing. And it changes on the daily. You're in pain one day, you can't sleep. You got in a fight with your partner, you can't sleep. Like you can't control all the things for sleep.
No, wouldn't that be nice? And then we'd be like, I'm getting into my pod now and I'm going to be sleeping. And you just, and then your mind just quiets down. This is the future that I live in.
Sounds terrifying.
I'm like, just put me to sleep every night. Plug me into whatever sound waves, But like it is true. It's interesting. Like there's this obsession with it. We don't really know much about it. It's constantly changing. And it's one of the most important elements of your health and of your mental health and your physical health. Your relationships suffer. It colors your entire view of what life is. So this is obviously a big topic to tackle.
Okay, so Miss Frizzle, on this season of the Wake and Bake podcast, we're giving each of our episodes a nerdiness scale on how nerdy is this. So I'm so curious, is this going to be like super nerdy or like where is this going to fall?
I hope it's the level of nerdy that most Magic School Bus episodes are. Like I still remember learning about the digestive system, and I remember that there was some pretty complex stuff going on in that particular episode. And I want it to be like that. I want you to be able to visualize what's happening in these very complex and somewhat mysterious systems in a way that you could explain it to a 5-year-old. So if I were going to put it on a scale, I'd say it's like a 5 or 6. And if you haven't already listened to our episode on the endocannabinoid system, maybe do that one first. But my hope is that if we do this right, you're going to be able to leave not just saying, oh, I have some facts about cannabis and sleep, but you're going to be able to imagine what's happening if you use cannabis for sleep, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, so the endocannabinoid system, it is a complex system of receptors and molecules and enzymes, and they together play a crucial role in maintaining balance in all of our other systems. This is often called homeostasis. And the endocannabinoid system, of course, is intimately involved in our sleep wake cycle and regulating sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very important process. And I don't want you to just know that as a thought, but let's imagine it. How exactly is it intertwined with the sleep wake process? So imagine Andrea's trying to fall asleep, and we're in our magic school bus winding around all of these folds and turns in her beautiful, mysterious brain. And in almost every area that we're passing through, we're seeing cannabinoid receptors. They're all over the place. They're almost everywhere in the brain, right? So, right now, we're passing by the hippocampus. And this is where all the things that Andrea has learned that day are getting processed into memories and knowledge. It's where all of the things that Andrea has experienced that day become real for her. It's where she can wake up the next day and recall what happened the day before, right? So, the hippocampus is a really incredible part of the brain. And when we're looking around in the hippocampus, there are a ton of these cannabinoid receptors in there, right? Now, this part isn't super important right now. The hippocampus is cool, but it's not the most important part when it comes to sleep and falling asleep. So we're going to move on, but we're going to come back to that later. Okay, so now we're passing through the basal ganglia, which is also chock full of these receptors, and scientists think may play a huge role in our sleep-wake cycle. And a big part of the role that the basal ganglia plays is knowing when we're supposed to be awake and aroused and with it, and when we're supposed to be asleep. So, if this area of Andrea's brain is stimulated from something like caffeine or too much blue light from our lovely glowing rectangles, or a lack of exposure to bright light during the day, or even stress, she might not know that she's supposed to be winding down right now because her basal ganglia is like, hey, it's time to be awake. Okay, so that's a pretty important part of the brain filled with endocannabinoid receptors. So now let's move on and let's go hang out in the cerebellum, where we're surrounded by all of these cannabinoid receptors. They're super densely populated in the cerebellum. And scientists think that the cerebellum plays a big part in that transition of falling asleep. Now, it also has a major role in language and thoughts. So think about that. If you're trying to fall asleep, and the part of your brain that is in control of that is also a big player in language and thoughts, that monkey mind might be coming into play here as well. If it's overactive in Andrea right now, she might have a hard time falling asleep because of things going on in the cerebellum, right? Does that make sense? So now let's move on into the dorsal spinal cord regions, where the brain receives its information from Andrea's body about whether or not she's feeling pain, right? This is a huge reason that people use cannabis for sleep, is because they're experiencing pain and can't fall asleep. Now, we can barely turn around in here because, again, there are so many cannabinoid receptors. So she's feeling pain from her body in this region. She could be having a hard time falling asleep. Now, let's go into one of my favorite parts of the brain. This is one of the oldest parts of the brain stem. There are no cannabinoid receptors in here. It is almost spookily empty of endocannabinoid receptors. You might be asking yourself, why are there none in here? What's going on? We just talked about all these places where there are tons of receptors, but this is empty. And that's a good thing, because even if Andrea tonight were to take a ton of THC, a ton, I mean an actual ton of THC, as much as she could possibly consume, she might feel like she's dying. But because the part of her brain that regulates her vital life processes doesn't have a lot of these receptors in it, she's going to be just fine. Her heart is going to continue to beat. She's going to keep breathing. She's going to be physiologically fine. So there's really nothing to see in here, except for the fact that Andrea can't die from taking too much cannabis when she tries to fall asleep tonight. So let's turn around and take the bus back out. Okay, Andrea, you're still awake now. So before you go to sleep, did that make sense? Do you have any questions about any of that?
No, I love that. And I also want to say take that opiates, because the brainstem is filled with opiate receptors, which is why you can die of an overdose of those types of medications.
Hit the road, opiates. We've got a new friend in town. Okay, so now that we know some of these structures in the brain that are really filled with these receptors, and we know a little bit more about their role in you falling asleep, staying asleep, processing your memories, let's talk about what happens when certain cannabinoids are introduced to the body and introduced to the brain that have an impact on these brain structures. So let's start out by saying that Andrea decides to take some CBD for sleep. Well, if she takes a big enough dose, or if she takes CBD consistently, she'll have more of her natural endocannabinoids rolling around in that beautiful brain of hers. Now, remember, endocannabinoids are our body's natural way of creating balance in the endocannabinoid system. So, if she's taking CBD, more of her own balancing molecules are interacting with those receptors in all of the places and creating homeostasis in those areas of the brain. So, you could see why CBD could potentially help with sleep at the right consistent dose, right?
Yeah. And we talked about this last time on the podcast that finding the right dose of CBD for all things, including sleep, is a journey.
It is a journey. It won't be like taking an Ambien. The odds of it just knocking you out or turning off your monkey mind completely are really low, but it could help create that balance and that homeostasis if you're consistent. So now let's say that Andrea decides to take THC, right? THC is one of the most commonly used cannabinoids for sleep. People use it in a variety of ways. They either smoke it or take it in edibles form. There are a lot of ways to use THC. Now, if Andrea were to happen to take the perfect dose for her, THC will go in and plug into those receptors in those areas in the brain and in other areas of the brain and body, and it will mimic that homeostasis that your body naturally creates, and she'll drift off to sleep easily. She'll have some pleasant dreams. She'll still solidify her memories, and she'll wake up without feeling groggy. How's that sound? This might not be an all the time thing. It doesn't seem to work that way. It seems that, like with all sleep aids, THC is best used occasionally while you do the things that it takes to get your endocannabinoid system back into balance naturally, which we'll talk about in a minute. Plus, Andrea, if you don't get the perfect dose for you, you might have a hard time getting into or spending time in your REM cycle, right? So, that rapid eye movement cycle that is very mysterious. We don't know why we need it, but it seems to be very critically important to getting a good night's sleep. You could also increase your anxiety or wind up in a thought spiral. You might have a hard time solidifying your knowledge. Maybe that hippocampus gets overactive and starts misfiring all of the things that you learned and experienced throughout the day. Again, it's a very mysterious process, but you might wake up feeling like, what happened yesterday? What did I learn about that thing? It might be a little bit foggy for you. You might have a hard time having dreams, which might be beneficial, which we'll talk about in a minute, but also might not be beneficial. I mean, because what are dreams? We don't even know. They might be real important. We have no idea. And you might wake up feeling groggy even if you had a full night's sleep. So, the point of getting good sleep is to wake up the next day feeling rested and like you've processed and you've recovered your body and your mind. You might end up waking up feeling not that way if you've taken too much THC or if you're doing this too consistently. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I find when specifically when I take too much THC in edible form, I will stay up at night and I'm not upset or anything. I'm just spinning on like happy thoughts and I've got like all these plans and
Mm.
stuff. But I'm lying in bed and then I wake up the next morning exhausted and groggy and like with no energy to do all those cool plans I thought about. So, yeah, it's the dose. The dose is always it's always the thing.
Yeah, it's absolutely about the dose. And we have this handy dandy dosage tracker that we released last week on Wake and Bake. So if you're struggling with that bit, please make sure to track your dose and figure out what works for you. But a higher dose isn't necessarily bad. And let's dig into that a little bit. Because if you take a higher dose, maybe that's what's required for you to feel less pain. It might be required for you to bring balance and to quiet down some of the activity inside the dorsal spinal cord regions, right? If you were having night terrors or you were having really complex, complicated dreams that would wake you up at night and have you ruminating over what it all means, that actually might benefit from more THC. For example, people who are experiencing PTSD or CPTSD, THC can be a really nuanced thing that you have to work with because you might want to tune down some of those dreams in order to get higher quality sleep. So it does seem like there's really a trade-off that happens when it comes to this particular molecule. But just keep in mind as you're on this journey that longer high dose use of THC for sleep might not be a good option in the long run. And when I'm talking about high dose use of THC, I'm not talking about it in terms of milligrams, right? You might need high doses in terms of milligrams. It might not affect you in the same way. When I say a high dose, I mean being really high from THC. So, like, you'll know the difference between when you've had a high dose for you, because a joint for Andrea and a joint for me is very different. It's not a high dose for her. And for me, I'm in outer space. I'm in the magic school bus. So there's nothing wrong with needing higher doses. There's also nothing wrong with being really high. Sometimes it can be completely transformative. It just might not be good for your endocannabinoid system when it comes to sleep in the long run. Does that make sense?
And that's the same with everything. We don't have a fix for sleep. There isn't one out there. There's not a pharmaceutical fix. There's not a lifestyle fix. There's not a cannabis fix. Although you did mention earlier that there are some things that we can do to support our endocannabinoid system into doing this balancing naturally. Can you go into that really quickly?
Yeah, let's go into that really quickly. And then I want to talk about some other lesser known cannabinoids because
Cool.
while there might not be a fix, there might be a mix. So let's talk about some different things that we can do. And I love that we're going to talk about this before we continue this talk about cannabinoids because, as you know, I am obsessed with different ways to balance out our endocannabinoid system naturally so that as we use cannabis as a supplement, we are moving towards a place where our system is coming back into balance and we are improving what they call endocannabinoid tone. So if our focus is on the plant and it's on these molecules, we might be missing the forest for the trees. If our focus is on the endocannabinoid system and how that works during sleep and how that works in our brain and our body, then I feel that you have a better chance of having longer term solutions that work for you as your life changes and as like you said, as sleep changes from you day to day. Now, Andrea, as you know, our endocannabinoid system was made beautifully, perfectly elegant in nature. And if we were all living in little huts, eating natural foods and like not like bombarded by artificial light and weird environmental toxins, we'd probably be great at sleep. We'd all be like, oh, cool. Well, the fire's gone out. Like that's what it would be like, at least in my mind. And there are times in my life where I'm like, I'm gonna do everything by candlelight. You know this about me. I'm just gonna cut everything, and that will balance my endocannabinoid system. But that's not realistic. I have a lot of candles that say that's not realistic. And so when we're talking about bringing balance to the endocannabinoid system, we are talking about regular sleep hygiene. These things that you've heard again and again. It's not sexy stuff. It is avoiding screens at night. It's not drinking caffeine too late in the day. It's really this basic wind down mentality. Read a book instead of looking at your phone. It's not sexy, but all of this stuff impacts the endocannabinoid system. And when we're talking about an umbrella system, that helps regulate every other system from the top down, it makes sense that these other things that we've studied that are good for sleep are also good for the endocannabinoid system. Another part of this is getting movement, but not going absolutely batshit bananas in the gym. Okay, there's like this middle ground that the endocannabinoid system seems to respond to. And I have one of those trackers of like strain and sleep that I've been doing little experiments on myself for the past couple months or so. And one of the interesting things is it tells you like, don't, if you're going super hard, then you need to get more sleep. And there's a balance there to the amount of activity and the type of activity that you get. And so if you train super, super hard, your endocannabinoid system actually has a hard time recovering. You need more sleep, right? And if you don't do anything at all, it also suffers. So there's this really important middle ground to consider when you're trying to get healthier and improve your health, to not get so extreme about it and think, I want to be jacked in 60 days, so I'm going to train. The odds of you having more struggles with sleep and recovering more poorly and having a detriment to your endocannabinoid system is much higher.
And now you're going to talk about the thing I hate talking about, aren't you?
Yeah, of course. I'm going to talk about the thing that you hate talking about because it's one of the rare things that we know directly impacts the endocannabinoid system, and that is cold showers. Now, I know you guys have been hearing it from every bro scientist all over the internet, like cold plunge, do a cold plunge, take a cold shower. And yeah, it's true. It does work for stimulating all sorts of systems, not just dopamine, but also this endocannabinoid system. And we think about the benefits of cold showers and cold plunges, reducing inflammation, reducing pain, increasing energy. That's all very intimately tied together in these systems that are all working together, right? It's not just one system over the other. But we do know that cold showers, cold plunges can help with sleep, and they do impact the endocannabinoid system tone in the long run. So now Andrea is nodding her head like she's no, she's
No,
not
I'm
gonna.
still never going to do them. So why don't you tell me about some of the other minor cannabinoids that might help with sleep? Because like I'll try all the other things to get better sleep. But I'm far more willing to try another cannabinoid than a cold plunge. So dive
Oh
in.
yeah. No, I'm not. It's not judgment at all because I'm the same way. I'm like, I'm gonna have an afternoon coffee, but I'll put some CBD in it. Like, it's like, don't call me right down. Yeah. Well, these aren't the only two cannabinoids that can have an impact on sleep. Now, I'm going to give this the big preface that we don't have a lot of research. And some of these cannabinoids, we don't have really any research. We just kind of have an idea of how they work inside the human body. And so we can say, well, if it works this way in the human body, maybe it'll work this way for sleep. So take this all with a grain of salt. We don't have great data. But we do have one piece of amazing data that I'm very excited about around CBN. Now, for the longest time, people were like, CBN, bro, it's great for sleep. It was like on all the gummies, sleep gummies, all these things. And we had no research that showed that CBN was even good for sleep. But we finally have, as of 2023, a double-blind paper saying that CBN is helpful for sleep, even if you take it alone, even without CBD. So there is evidence that CBN can be good for sleep. Now, do not stop this podcast and go, okay, great, I'm going to go try CBN now, because there's a lot that you have to know about choosing a CBN product. CBN can be absolutely gross. So don't go to your dispensary and go, oh, I need something with CBN in it, and just take whatever they give you. First, I want to ask Andrea, what do you look out for? What questions do you have to ask when it comes to choosing a CBN product?
I think it's going to be really interesting to see if people can actually get CBN products, because almost every product I see that has CBN in it also has something else. Almost all of the time it's THC, because there's lots of like anecdotal research out there that THC and CBN can be a really good sleepy time combo. CBD and CBN is new to me and exciting, but because they're almost always packaged together, it's hard to like parse whether it's the THC helping you sleep or the CBD or the CBN. So first of all, see if you can find something that's separate, just CBN, so that you can try it or add it into your current routine and see if it helps. And then, like you said, oh my God, some CBN is made supernaturally. It's not actually made on the plant. It's a degradation product of THC. It like degrades into CBN over time. So you can quote unquote make your own CBN by like leaving a jar of THC flower at the back of your cupboard and pulling it out a couple of years later. And a lot of that THC will have changed into CBN.
You can also decarboxylate and speed up that process more.
Yeah, you can do a double decarb and it'll turn a lot of the THC into CBN. So like try to make your own basically. Um, and part of the reason that we're kind of like harping on this particular thing is that CBN, just like a lot of the other minor or rare cannabinoids like Delta 8 THC or THCO acetate, a lot of these are actually produced by CBD byproduct. And it's like gross and disgusting. Please go listen to the episode on Delta 8 THC. So you got to do your due diligence again.
Yeah, I don't think that I would buy a CBN product from a store. I would DIY that one. Granted, you're not going to know how much is in it. You're not going to have an idea. So you're going to have to really start low and go slow, especially if you're trying to use it for sleep and you don't want to have an experience that would keep you up. But it would be very difficult to find the answers you're looking for, especially in a dispensary system. So we're still in the space where we don't have a product that we can go try this CBN. But when we do, and when we figure out more about CBN and how to source it, we'll make an episode about it. So those are those top three cannabinoids. We have real research on those three. We know that they have an impact on sleep, even though it's very nuanced and very mysterious. But we also have I don't know, more than 150 other compounds in cannabis, including acidic cannabinoids. So back on the Tammy Sweet podcast we did in this season, she mentioned that CBDA can play a huge role in serotonin, and serotonin we know plays a huge role in sleep. So is there any reason to incorporate CBDA if you're starting to look at cannabinoids for sleep?
Yeah, we don't have this is a cannabinoid that we have like almost no research on in humans, but because CBDA and THCA both work at extremely low doses, so you can take much less THCA or CBDA than their decarbed counterparts. It's wonderful to just try it to incorporate it into what you're already doing. Maybe add like a pea-sized nug of CBD flower into your tea at night and see if that helps you relax from some of those thoughts, or CBDA can also help with pain. So we don't know. We can't say like, hey, there is research on this, But for sure, for the small amount of time and energy and money that it would cost you to try both of those, I think if you're struggling with sleep, like, yeah, with that schedule that we talked about when we're talking about dosing, like, try it for a week and then increase the dose a little bit and try it for another week and just give it the good old college try.
And when we're talking about this, we're talking about not heating up cannabis. It's really that simple. I know we kind of just blasted into acidic cannabinoids, which took our nerdiness scale to like a 7 or 8, but it only means that you're not setting it on fire, you're not vaporizing it, you're not decarboxylating it. So this is unheated. You can put it in water because the acidic cannabinoids tend to be much more water soluble than the decarboxylated or heated cannabinoids. Now, one of the cool things about acidic cannabinoids and non-heated cannabinoids like THCA and CBDA is that they might have a more direct impact on the brain and the things that are happening in there because of their ability to pass through the blood-brain barrier much more readily. They seem to be working better at lower doses. This is a real frontier of these cannabinoids, and all it means is skipping the step of setting it on fire or heating it up for a long period of time. Plus, THCA looks like it might have neuroprotective and anti inflammatory actions in the brain. Again, these are animal studies and not human studies, so we don't know for sure, but it could have a positive impact on the brain. And CBDA might be helpful with things like anxiety. Again, we don't have the studies to back this up, but these are very safe. You're not going to take too much of them because remember when we looked around in your brainstem, there were no receptors that could shut down your breathing or your heart. So these are safe options for you to explore if you have access to legal cannabis and hemp.
Okay, so knowing everything that you know, Miss Frizzle slash Corinne Tobias, what are your kind of overarching thoughts on using cannabis for sleep?
To me, there's a mindfulness component to it because you have to be paying attention and you have to be realistic and reasonable with what you expect from this plant. You have to be willing to take a journey, right? You have to be willing to get on the magical school bus in your own body and see what's working for you and see how it's impacting you. I mean, this is the best tool that we have. We have all this cool research and it's awesome, but you are your own guinea pig. You are your own experiment in so many ways. And you're the only one who can figure out what works for you, especially when it comes to dynamic plant medicines like this. So, what I took away from doing this research was that yes, there are all these magical parts of the brain, and there's this mysterious dance of sleep and information processing and relaxation that happens, but it still boils down to living in a way that's closer to what we would as humans be doing naturally, which means that natural sleep hygiene stuff, and also figuring out what works for you in cannabis, maybe starting with those acidic cannabinoids, maybe not going for the THC first, even though that's the one that we're all most familiar with, but experimenting with some of these other things. And there is this mindfulness component. And I think it's about taking the gifts that cannabis gives you, which is muscle relaxation, pain reduction. It can reduce anxiety, all of these beautiful gifts and tuning into what they are and allowing those to expand within your own body by using your own attention, by being your own Miss Frizzle, by getting on your own magic school bus as you're going to sleep and tuning into what's actually happening and let it happen, let it expand. And so I think that that's the most impactful thing that I learned, even though there are all these cool facts about it, was that it kind of all boils down to this like paying attention to what's happening in your own body and feeling that and experiencing a sense of gratitude for that while it's doing its thing.
I love that. You're not just depending on the plant. You're depending on the magic of the plant along with the magic of your body and the magic of your attention to do the
Yeah.
work all together.
It's pretty amazing. And for those of you who have a hard time doing that, who have a hard time tuning into your own body because you're like, but then what about this shopping list? And what about this? I put on my meditation teacher voice, which I like to do as often as I possibly can. And I made a cannabis for sleep meditation. So that's coming soon. And I hope that that helps. If you do have monkey mind and you want to be tuning into how this plant is working in your own body and whether or not it helps you to sleep, right? You can experiment with a more guided way to do that.
I love that. And also, if people are listening right now in November 2023, they're going to get points for listening to this podcast and listening to the sleep meditation. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. So right now in November of 2023, you can get, like Andrea said, you can get all these points for listening to podcasts and doing other cannabis education and cannabis wellness activities. If you go to the link below, you can enter to win. And these points add up and you get entries to win an Ardent FX, our favorite decarboxylator, butter maker, edibles maker. It's like I think they call it the Easy Bake Oven for adults, which we love. And we're also giving away a scholarship to the Certified Cannabis Educator Program with the business bundle. So you get everything that you need to learn how to talk to people about this plant and get paid doing it.
Oh my gosh, other people can go out there and be Miss Frizzles of cannabis. This is going to be amazing.
Oh my God. Yeah. If you feel like when I said you can be a Miss Frizzle and you were like, oh my gosh, then you're our people. Come being nerds.
Come join us.
With us. And like figure out new ways to talk to people about this, right? The Miss Frizzle thing, it's silly. It kind of seems gimmicky, but if you're leaving this podcast and you're like, wow, when you go use cannabis for sleep tonight, you have a different experience with it. Think about how you could do that for other people. And if you're like, I don't want to do a contest, but I want to do this, you can also sign up for the program. So you can do this in as little as 3 months. And it's now accredited by the International Practitioners of Holistic Medicine. And we're very excited about being able to bring this into, so many different new places, so many different new communities. So join us.
Come join us. Yeah.
And then now bloopers.
There's
that
a lot.
was a blooper. Yay!
We're finally fucking doing the Miss Frizzle podcast. Are you dying right now?
Did you see my outfit? I was like, look, it has all these G's and D's and B's and C's. I was like,
I didn't even notice.
I'm going to find a dress and I'm going to have someone do like THC molecules and all the things so that when I do my workshops, I get to dress like Miss Frizzle. It's like becoming a thing.
I will fly there for that.
Oh my God. Oh, yay. Well, then I'll definitely do it.
Can you please put in the folds of my brain like fun stuff? Like, I don't know, donuts, moose, weed. I don't know. Like just
I'm going to be all Canadian hockey sticks, maple syrup, universal healthcare. It's going to all be in there. Leveraging what you're experiencing with the gift that cannabis. No. I can't be saying cannabis wrong. Now all the cannabis people are gonna be like, what an idiot.
We're unsubscribe.
There's no shotgun on a bus, Andrea. Get in the back. My lizard rides shotgun.
Sorry, I got weird there for a
second. Yeah, okay. I love that you're such a weirdo. I got phlegm. I'm out of saliva. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Out. Like it was your basal gland. Quit licking your vag and growl. Her heart's gonna keep breathing. Their nipples are so well covered, creating some space for your brain to get loose.
Look at these stoners. They're advocating for loose brains on the internet and the interwebs. I'm so excited for real.